We're thrilled to be speaking with Dr. Marty Leon, who is the director of the Center for Interventional Vascular Therapies at the Columbia University Medical Center, and with Dr. Kobi Richter, who is the founder and chief technology officer for Medinol. Dr. Richter, Medinol has been in the stent business for quite a while and has recently started selling directly in the United States. Can you tell us a little bit more about Medinol's history in a nutshell?
About 20 years ago, we started Medinol, myself and Dr. Judith Richter. We teamed up at first with Boston Scientific, who sold our products worldwide, and we gained the #1 market share rapidly in Europe and in the US when we introduced the stents. We later tried 2 other partners to market our product. We thought that will let us focus on the development and manufacturing, but realized we should market and sell our product ourselves. That gives us better control on how to introduce in the market our product. We have decided recently to build our own marketing and sales force, which we did in the US and in Europe. It feels a bit like a startup again, with the excitement of adding a new activity that we did not have before, but we are sure the market will realize the quality of our products and will let us get in with the experience we have and the good products we introduce.
Dr. Leon, you've known Medinol from the early days of interventional cardiology. When Medinol first introduced the near stent, what did that mean to you as a practitioner?
In the early days of coronary stenting, the devices we had were primitive. They were inflexible, rigid tubes that we had to insert in the coronary tree. The Medinol near stent was a revolutionary design that allowed us to maintain the optimal scaffolding of the stent, but now introduced the concept of flexibility in a balloon expandable design, so that we could negotiate the coronary tree and treat many more patients and many more lesions with complex coronary disease.
What makes Medinol different from the other companies in the interventional cardiology industry?
I think from the very beginning, Medinol has had a very different and differentiated culture. And the culture and the differences really fall into 3 categories. The first is the design elements are truly innovative. They are a generation or 2 ahead of what the current industry standard is. The second difference is there's an obsessive commitment to the highest quality manufacturing. And third, I think Medinol at a very early time recognized that in order to have products introduced and widely used, you needed clinical evidence. So high quality clinical trials to be able to demonstrate that the ingenious designs and the high quality manufacturing provide incremental clinical benefit was fundamental to Medinol's success.
Dr. Richter, how would you answer a similar question? What makes Medinol unique?
I believe that medical device companies is a multidisciplinary business that needs, first of all, the knowledge in life sciences and medicine, in metalwork, mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, and so on, in order to develop the device, and then a good understanding of manufacturing and manufacturability in order to make those devices manufacturable. We've been there from the cradle of stenting business and learned together with the practitioner the upsides and the problems of stenting. So we have behind us the ability of design and the experience of what was good, what was bad, that combines everything. And being a private company rather than a public company, we are not pushed to irrelevant directions by investors and quarterly reports, which makes it easier to focus on what we need to do.
Medinol is very proud of its unique stent manufacturing technology called Quality Surface. Can you tell us what is so unique about it?
Right from the very first year, we adopted a very different way of making stents. We adopted it from the microelectronics business, and we make stents flat on panels, like 100 stents at a time on a single panel. And the advantages are many. First of all, you use higher quality metal, which is flat rather than a tube. You make the stents much more accurately and with higher quality, and then it allows you the flexibility of changing designs, changing the thickness and size in a very fast move, so we could have development at shorter periods of time. And when the era of drug-eluting stents came about, coating stents flat rather than a very miniature tube is 10 times more efficient and allows you also the use of other polymers and other techniques that makes it more accurate and more efficient.
When we look at Medinol's bare metal stent and NearXL, the first thing that comes to mind is the very low TLR rate of 5% at 9 months. What enables this stent to achieve such a remarkable result?
I believe that the combination of features of the stent is still very important, even though it's a bare metal stent and people believe that all stents are alike. I think what Professor Marty Leon said before, namely that right from the beginning we tried to combine the flexibility with the quality of scaffolding, continued with us, and we make sure that our designs have at the same time a good scaffolding without opening too much the cells on a bend, for example, but with a good conformability that will not traumatize the vessel when it moves during the systolic cycle. All that together makes a better stent, and I believe that our TLR will always be the best of any BMS.
Medinol recently introduced a new catheter technology called Flex Squared. In challenging cases, how does this enable the deliverability of the NearXL system?
This is a very interesting innovation that we introduced in our catheters. The tip of the catheter, as every practitioner knows, is a major point of challenge in deliverability, as the tip may flare out and catch on plaque, or the tip may buckle and become very bulky when going through tight stenosis. Our new technology is a tip that is made of a metal spring rather than a polymer, and it combines, first of all, a flexibility much better than any polymer tip, but without sacrificing its strength, column strength, that allows it not to buckle even when pushed very hard through a tight lesion. Altogether, it makes a stent that will make the deliverability through challenging lesions improved significantly.
Dr. Leon, having used NearXL yourself, how does its delivery system fare in challenging anatomies?
As a clinical practitioner in interventional cardiology, when we use coronary stents, we think of three things. The device has to be deliverable. We have to get it to challenging anatomy. It has to be safe, which means we can't have problems with the device. It can't become distorted. It has to expand in a uniform way. We can't have complications. And also it has to be effective, which means we have to have excellent acute angiographic results, and we have to have long-term excellent clinical outcomes. And NearXL and the family of Near stents from the very beginning, and including now the new drug-eluting versions, have incorporated these three features. So NearXL is the premier bare metal stent from the standpoint of deliverability, effectiveness, and safety. So in challenging anatomy, the NearXL becomes the default device that clinical practitioners should be using in the future.
When designing stent architecture, how important is it to find the correct balance in trade-off between scaffolding and conformability, and why?
Unfortunately, in the modern era, many people think that stents have become commodities, that the geometries don't make much of a difference, and that all stents are alike. The reality is it's not so difficult to build a stent which is extremely flexible, but to build an extremely flexible stent that also has optimal scaffolding to be able to displace plaque and not to allow protrusion on bend points is extremely difficult. And that has been the signature of the NEAR stent since the beginning. And that's why this balance between conformability, scaffolding, and flexibility is truly a distinguishing characteristic of the device.
Dr. Richter, have we reached the perfect stent design, or is there still room for improvement?
I believe stent design has come close enough to where we can improve it, but not the stenting system. There's a lot to be done on the delivery system, on the quality and features of the balloon and the catheter as a whole. And the stent also, as new materials will kick in, the design features will have to adapt themselves to the new materials. So no, there's no end to changes and improvements in design.
Dr. Leon, what's your opinion? Is there still room for innovation in stent technology?
Medical devices are unlike drugs. Drugs are relatively static from the standpoint of development once they're introduced. But once a medical device is commercially introduced, it's in a constant state of evolution. And I think the evolution almost never stops. And certainly the focus of innovation can change. So for a medical device like a stent, the focus initially was on geometry, was on design. Now there's been further evolution in the delivery system. And I think that the Medinol NEAR XL has shown this. So the deliverability of the device is not just the metallic stent design, but it's the integration of the stent and the delivery system. There's innovation in manufacturing. If you can manufacture the device with higher quality at lower cost, then you can introduce it commercially to practitioners, to hospitals, at a much more reasonable, cost-effective way and in a cost-constrained environment. This, to me, is also innovation. And as we go further and talk about drug delivery, there are many different ways that a flat-coated elastomeric stent design in a drug-eluting platform may be innovative compared to the competitors. So the simple answer is we will never stop innovating. And Medinol really has been the prototype company that has been synonymous with continuous innovation.
What are the challenges facing DES manufacturers in order to further improve clinical outcomes?
To me, drug-eluting stents are so much more complicated than bare metal stents. We've introduced two new elements. One is we have to have a pharmaceutical that is delivered with precision over a period of time at very, very careful dosing. And we also have to deliver it using a polymer. So these two new elements introduce issues that are very different than just building a bare metal stent. And these two new elements add concerns about biocompatibility of the device. And we've learned that if the device is not biocompatible, that it affects outcomes. And it certainly affects safety, including issues such as early and late stent thrombosis. So if you have a better technology with a flat-coated chemistry process where you can deliver the drug on a flat sheet as opposed to a tube, if you have an elastomeric polymer, which is intrinsically more biocompatible, I think you ultimately are going to have a safer, more effective device. So I think that these innovations in the Medinol DES platform are unique in the field and should translate into different clinical outcomes.
Dr. Richter, what can you tell us about the new drug-eluting stent that's currently in clinical trials in Europe and the United States? How does it answer some of the challenges posed by Dr. Leon?
We are running today trials both in Europe and in the US. Altogether, more than 2,200 patients. We have completed recruitment in the European trial and about to complete recruitment in the US trial, where we are randomizing our stent against the Resolute in the probably the widest inclusion criteria used in such comparison of stents. And when approved, we'll put it in the market with its special advantages that come from the elastomeric polymer.
You've named your DES an EDES, standing for elastomeric. Can you tell us what are the advantages of using an elastomeric polymer?
We believe that the regular or the durable polymers that are in the market are brittle to the level that when the stent expands, it cracks and peels. And this cracking and peeling expose the backside of the polymer that is thought to be thrombogenic, and also creates a non-uniform surface that could be traumatic. The elastomeric polymer allows the polymer to stretch a lot without cracking, so the stent retains its integrity and smooth surface through the expansion, and as a matter of fact, throughout the elution, where drug is eluted out and only the polymer is left behind. The possibility of using an elastomeric polymer is enabled by our flat manufacturing that allows a slower drying polymer to be applied on a flat surface as opposed to a stent that rolls during the spraying and needs a polymer that dries very fast so it does not drip.
Dr. Richter, in addition to your EDS, what are Medinol's plans for future innovation?
To name just a few of the products that we are in the development of, there is a new peripheral vasculature stent that is made very different from all stents until now. It's a hybrid stent whose circular structure is made of metal and will give a good support, but its longitudinal structure is made of a mesh of very fine elastomer fibers, so the stent is more conformable and flexible than any stent. It has the ultimate resistance against fracture, and we believe it will find its way to a very wide use in the periphery. To complement that, we have developed also a system for opening CTOs that are, as you know, on a very high percentage of peripheral cases. It's a system called the piculette that has a longitudinal vibration, but at a very different amplitude and frequency from what was in the market, that we believe is much more effective in crossing through CTOs, and also it leaves a hole that is 1 millimeter wide and not just the 0.14 wire. Outside of the stenting business, we are very advanced in developing a new aortic valve for a TAVR procedure that is a 10 to 12 French, real 10, 12 French diameter with a very innovative solution for complete elimination of paravalvular leaks. We have another field of work that is very exciting for all of us. It's very miniature sensors, submillimetric in size, for chronic implantation in the body. The first application would be in cardiology, for example, in the pulmonary artery for CHF, or in the liver vasculature for different liver diseases. And it has many other applications in other fields. So we are very busy developing new stuff. We are having a lot of fun and hopefully a lot of effect on the future medical field.
Dr. Leon, you've been intimately involved in the valve development project from its inception. How would you characterize its unique characteristics and what makes it stand out relative to the plethora of devices that are out there?
We've had many breakthrough technologies, I think, in interventional cardiology. Certainly starting with balloons with Andreas Grunzig more than 30 years ago. Then with the stent revolution, beginning with bare metal stents and now drug-eluting stents, and we've discussed those. I think another breakthrough technology over the past 5 years has been the development of transcatheter aortic valve replacement, this new field of TAVR. And I truly believe that it's going to become the almost universal therapy for the vast majority of patients with valvular aortic stenosis. But there are limitations in the current designs. And even though people call this a revolution, I would argue that what we're trying to do with Valve Medical is the revolution within the revolution. We're trying to create a design which is ultra low profile, so we can deliver it in essentially every patient from a percutaneous transfemoral route. We're trying to develop a unique valve geometry and methodology of implant where we actually, in situ, in the body, we reconstruct a medical device. We put a frame and then we dock to that frame a valve module. Never been done before. It allows us to efficiently and with very little trauma to the valve deliver these devices in extremely low profile. We also have other characteristics, including an elastomeric polymer that should eliminate paravalvular leak. When you put all these characteristics together, it really is a highly differentiated and next generation device, which is why I call it the revolution within the revolution. And if we can demonstrate that this device can be implanted safely and consistently in patients, it's going to have a meaningful impact on the patients we treat with aortic stenosis.
What role will affordability play in considerations of which products to utilize? Is there room for BMS, DES, bioabsorbable stents, and how do they all interact with specific patients and specific lesions?
It's an interesting and complex question. I believe in the future that still the centerpiece of coronary therapeutic devices will be forms of drug-eluting stents. I think most of these are going to be metallic from the standpoint of the frame, although maybe there will be some bioresorbable scaffolds in the future that may have specific applications in certain patients that could be advantageous. Similarly, there will also be a minority of patients where bare metal stents will be important for various reasons, mainly safety related and mainly drug compliance issues that relate to specific patient populations. But as we develop new medical technologies, particularly those that involve greater costs, it really affects the healthcare system. We have a global economic crisis in terms of medical costs, and it affects the availability and access to medical technology. So if we can develop high-quality devices at lower costs, then patients can access them. In third world countries where it's so difficult to get these medical devices, they now become available, and the impact is dramatically changed. So I do believe that of all of the innovations in the future, the ability to achieve optimal, high-quality device designs at lower costs will become one of the most important features and issues. So if Medinol can continue to achieve this, I think it's part of its success story.
Thank you very much for your insights.